the Holy Land, you get to step into the old city of Jerusalem with its old streets, its old buildings, the memories of an old, ancient world. Did seeing that world affect your understanding of the Gospels or of Holy Week? Well, it's interesting because, when you go to the Holy Land, you have kind of this duality. You're going and you're walking in the footsteps of Jesus, and you're reminded many, many times that Jesus never walked, exactly where you're walking, because they've built up the city. It was destroyed and then built up and destroyed and built up again. And so, like in this literal way, like no, Jesus did not walk in these footsteps. And yet, and I think for myself and maybe for you guys too, like there's still that feeling. Of like, no, we're still in Israel, we're still in Jerusalem, we're still in this Holy Land. And there's just something unique and profound about that simple fact. And so as you're going to these different spots, as you're walking around and you're seeing these places that are centuries and centuries and centuries old, it's something that we, in our very new American world and American context don't get to feel, just this ancientness of it that, in some ways just immediately, I think, connects you back to some of these stories in this ancient world that Jesus was living in and talking about. And so I think it just adds to that experience.
I think although the city's been, like you said, created, destroyed, built up again, and some things are underground, like the Praetorium is now probably 15 feet underground by the time it's been built upon and built upon and built upon. But the overall topography, of course, is the same. Like the Sea of Galilee is the Sea of Galilee. That's there. The mountain ranges, the Mount of the Ascension, the Mount of Olives, Mount Zion, all those are exactly the same as they were it's basically the same. So for Holy Week for me, what was most profound is by reading the scriptures prior to going to the Holy Land, never really had an understanding of when Christ was first condemned, where the Last Supper was, to the traveling across the Kidron Valley to the Garden of Gethsemane, being betrayed by Judas, walking through the Kidron Valley again, back up to the place of Peter's denial, and then where he spent his evening in a dungeon, essentially, until Good Friday morning. So for Holy Week, for me, the topography of that whole journey, that whole experience of Christ, that I think was what most came to life for me. Because sometimes when you read the scriptures, it doesn't fit. But now again, we've probably said it 20 times already, all of us, the visual, and to know this is exactly where it happened.
I think the topography is at least that sense of, Jerusalem is built on top of a mountain, a ridge, and it's everywhere you walk, you're either going up or down. There's really no flat spots there. And so as you go from church to church or from place to place, and you think of the Kidron Valley, going up and down the Kidron Valley is no small thing. I think there's one road as you go up to Gethsemane where as you begin to walk it, it kind of feels like you're walking up this, it's paved, but you don't really see how a bus could drive up it. And there's that sense of the journeying from place to place. I think that I take away. I think it was Father Lerner who mentioned earlier the very stones that have been walked on for a few hundred years, and how this Jerusalem stone, as it's worn down, becomes slick. That it becomes almost slippery, and that as you go up and down these streets, and you kind of feel your feet slipping on the stones, and it puts the whole city into this different perspective. Because how often do you see a Roman or earlier era city that's still walled, that has kind of the same street structure, and to see it living and alive, and with carts and with shops and the smells and the spices and the maybe not so savory smells and everything kind of all together as you walk up and down these steep little streets. It's this very alive sense that you get.
And just some of the we're talking about the topography, some of that is still like the steps of the presentation leading up to temple. We know that those were the very ones. The steps leading up to Peter's denial, those they say are the same exact ones that were there at that time. Obviously the Kidron Valley, exactly the same. So a lot's changed, but a lot's remained the same, as they say. Yeah.